Hi, I'm Jess from Recycle for Greater Manchester. Today we're going to be talking about some tips for reducing your food waste. So we're going to be talking about portion planning and buying the right amount, using your fridge right, understanding date labels, complete eating, which is using up every last bit, using leftovers, storage, and using your freezer right as well. So food waste is contributing to climate change. 70% of all food wasted in the UK is from our own homes. Each year, the UK households throw away 4.5 million tonnes of food that could have been eaten. If food waste was a country, the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that it'd be producing, it'd be the top three in the world. So behind the USA and China with their global greenhouse gas emissions that they're producing, food waste would be third if it was a country. So 1/3 of the food produced globally goes to waste, which impacts us financially, socially, and environmentally. This is a massive problem that means there's a huge opportunity for us as individuals to make a positive difference and reduce the amount of food waste we throw away at home. So our everyday preferences are responsible for a lot of this and a huge amount of food waste. So hopefully after this, we're hoping to make it easier for residents to reduce their food waste at home to as close to zero as possible. It's a really big step forward in helping reducing our emissions and helping to stop climate change. So planning. One of the best things to do for planning is to make sure that you've got perfect portions when you're making your meals, so there's not so many leftovers unless you want leftovers for meal prepping. So for example, lots of people find themselves making far too much rice or pasta and then it could get wasted. It's easy to do, but there's simple ways to make the perfect amounts. So on Love Food Hate Waste, there's loads and loads of tips and lots of guidance on making the perfect portions. So for example, a mug filled with dry rice will cook enough for 4 adults. So more about some planning. One good way, this is to do with shopping. So if you don't want to make a shopping list, a good thing to do is to snap a shelfie. So take a picture of your fridge or cupboard or shelves before you go to the shops instead. Plan your meals before you make a shopping list and before you go shopping. So plan your meals out for the week so that you're not overbuying and then it doesn't lead to food waste. And keep things cool as well. So when you do go shopping, make sure you take some cool bags with you so that things aren't defrosting and they won't spoil. So moving on to using your fridge correctly. So the average fridge temperature is nearly 7 degrees, but foods will last longer if they're kept at under 5 degrees. So did you know the equivalent of 3.1 million glasses of milk are poured down our kitchen sinks every day in the UK? And that could be avoided by keeping the fridge cooler, and that a family of 4 wastes around £70 a month by chucking food away. So again, this can be tackled by keeping the fridge cooler and it could make it last up to 3 days longer. The UK household could make an extra 7 meals a week if it said goodbye to unnecessary food waste. So the good news is with your fridge, it's an easy fix, this one. You can set your fridge to the right temperature so your milk and other foods can last, like I said, up to 3 days longer. So more tips on using your fridge correctly. Make sure you shut the fridge door when you get your milk out to make a brew, which can be quite often. Make sure your fridge door's shut. So it can increase the temperature inside the fridge significantly each time the fridge door is opened, and it could take hours to cool down again. Don't put hot food straight in the fridge, which can raise your fridge temperature as well and lead to more spoiling. So wait until your food has cooled down to room temperature, and then you can place it in the fridge. So it's around leave it at least 1 to 2 hours before you put it in the fridge. And store food in the right area of the fridge. So some parts of the fridge are less cool than others. So usually you can put things like cheese and eggs in your fridge door, but things that are going to spoil quite quickly, so your veg and things like that, have certain parts that you want to put it in. So usually at the bottom of the fridge, and things like yogurt as well spoil quite easily, so you want to put those in your lower shelves of the fridge generally. Again, Love Food Hate Waste website has all the advice on where to store things correctly in your fridge specifically. Then moving on to understanding food labels. So the use by date is about safety. So it shouldn't be eaten after this date, even if it looks or smells fine. So it's more of like a hard date, with the exception of before it reaches its food use by date, you can freeze it right up. Well, not before you, but you can freeze it right up to and including the use by date. And then once it's gone past the use by date, as long as you've frozen it, it can last for significantly longer in the freezer. So that's the exception with the use by date if you freeze it. And then best before is more about quality, so it's just a rough guidance. Although food won't be at its top quality after the best before date, it will still be safe to eat. And if stored correctly, these items below here can actually last a lot longer. So usually these items just have a best before date, but like I said, it's just a guidance. So with crisps, even if the best before date is after it's gone past, if you've had them they can be stored up to 1 month. Biscuits are around 6 months. Again, this is just a guidance. Cereals around 6 months. Canned food can be 12 months. Confectionery 12 months. Pasta sauce 12 months, and dried pasta up to 3 years. So these kind of things you can store for a really long time. And this display until or sell by, these are just for retailers, so you don't need to worry about these. They're not relevant whatsoever for us. So just ignore the display until or sell by. And now we're just going to talk about eating all of your food, which we called complete eating. So if we're always binning crusts or broccoli stems and things like that, over 2/3 of the food we eat is perfectly edible. So things like your crusts and your broccoli stems are edible. So we kind of want to reduce the amount of waste from these things as well by eating all of our fruit and veg where possible, as well as other items. So complete eating is essential. So many of us choose to ignore the skins, leaves, stalks and crusts of our favourite foods. So do your bit. Don't just eat it, eat it. So what you can do to complete eat, things like leaving the skins on your potatoes when you make your chips or when you make mashed potatoes. Most of the time with most veg you can leave your skins on, and the same with fruit except for things like oranges and even your kiwis you can leave the skin on if you can stand the furry skin. You can also make stronger soldiers. So my husband's a stickler for this one. He always throws away the crust on the bread. He doesn't like the end of the bread. So I usually eat the crust, but instead, if I don't get round to it, you can make stronger soldiers. So you can toast it and make soldiers for dipping in your eggs and things like that with your crusts if you're not a fan of them. Or we usually freeze them and make things like croutons when we do defrost them, or just chop them up beforehand to make croutons. You don't need to peel your apples for apple pies or crumbles, and when you're eating your apples you don't need to peel them either. The skin's usually very good for you. And then if you've got a bit of salsa left and then your fridge that's been lingering around, when you've got your pizza crusts, which a lot of people use as well, so rather than wasting the salsa and your pizza crusts, you can dip those pizza crusts in the salsa or other dipping sauces that you want to just get rid of the ends of. You can use things like leaves from sprout trees. So if you've got like the long stem of sprouts, there's usually leaves on them, and they're a good substitute, and they taste very similar to cabbage. You can again another tip for the crust. So the ends of a loaf of bread can make mini pizza bases. And when you're making things like cauliflower cheese, you can leave the stalks and the leaves on that, and that goes for your broccoli, like we mentioned. You can eat the stalks, especially in things like soups. It's really easy to leave like the stalks on and the leaves, because you're blending it all up and you're not going to really see much of a taste difference in that, and it's reducing the waste. And then things like skins on beetroots, you can leave those on. You can roast them with the skins on, or you can roast them on their own in oil. And you can use the leaves as well as a substitute, as they taste very similar to chard or spinach. So you can eat the leaves. Now, using your freezer, we want everyone to optimize their freezer. It's a really, really good way to reduce food waste. So if you don't think you're gonna use up food in time or by the use by date, then like we mentioned before, freeze it for another day. So it's really helpful if your plans change last minute. If you just don't want to cook, but you've got all these ingredients in, freeze what you can. Or if you've got leftovers, you don't think you're going to eat them tonight, you don't fancy it, you've changed your mind, then just stick your leftovers in your freezer instead. If you've got too much milk, you don't have to pour your remaining milk away. You can put it into ice cube trays and freeze your milk. You can also freeze whole bottles of milk as well for another time. But freezing it in an ice cube tray is like perfect portions for brews and tea and coffee, things like that. You can also use your ice cube trays for fresh herbs. So you can chop up fresh herbs, so you think if they're going off or they're starting to wilt a bit, and then you can chop up some fresh herbs, pop them into an ice cube tray and top it up with oil, and then you have easy portions for the next time you're cooking. You can put your sliced loaf in the freezer as well. So if you have got a small family or people in your family don't tend to eat a lot of bread, but you only have the option of getting a whole loaf, then you can put your sliced loaf in the freezer, and then you can pick out a slice at a time for toast if that's mainly what it's used for, and just toast it straight from frozen. You can also tap the loaf on the counter before you freeze it to stop the slices sticking together, which is another tip. And then to avoid unidentified frozen objects in your freezer, before you freeze your leftovers, label the bag or the container telling you what's inside and when you froze it as well. Now, storage. So most fruit and veg will stay fresher for longer in the fridge, but with the exception of bananas and pineapples, you want to keep those on the counter. And then things like onions and potatoes should be kept in a cool, dark, dry place, like a cupboard. Again, there's a lot more tips on storage on the Love Food Hate Waste website, and it goes into detail about lots and lots of different items. And then there's some apps that can actually make your life a little bit easier and help you to reduce your food waste, which is also helping you to save money. So if you do have excess leftover food, for any kind of packaged food, like packaged dry food and stuff that doesn't really perish easily, so your more long life foods, you can give them to food banks. And then for any food that's not gone off, that you don't think you're going to eat and you don't think you'll ever really eat them because you're just not that keen, you can put things on Olio, which is an app where you just kind of take a picture of what food you've got excess of and put it on the app, and then someone will come and pick it up. So it's kind of a really good community app where you can kind of all chip in together and reduce your food waste. And then the Too Good To Go app is an app for restaurants, cafes, even small stores and takeaways as well. So what they'll do, if they have any excess food left at the end of the day, they will put it on the app. They usually put it on the app in the morning because they'll know that they've got too much, and then you just reserve, it's usually a bag or a certain portion, and you go and pick it up for a really, really small cost. So it's basically like getting a cheap takeaway, and it's saving food from being thrown away as well. And then the Food Cloud app is it partners with supermarkets. So it partners supermarkets with charities to donate unsold food items. So this is one of the best food waste apps for supporting local communities through organisations such as homeless shelters and family support services. So this is more for one if you know someone who works in a supermarket and things like that. So it's an easy way for them to use and donate food, should I say. And then there's an app called No Waste. So this has a receipt and a barcode scanner. So what it does, it gives you reminders for expiration dates. It has a meal planning feature, and it's basically like a food inventory for your house and for your food at home, and it helps you to reduce waste and unnecessary purchases to save money. So most of those apps are actually free. There's some which are a small cost to download, but it's not very much. And then if you want ideas for leftovers, so for example, if like cranberry sauce at Christmas, there's loads, or like you made extra sprouts, or you cooked too much broccoli, or you roast like leftover roast potatoes and things like that. There's lots and lots of ideas for recipes to use those kind of items on the Love Food Hate Waste website, BBC Good Food, Good Housekeeping, and Pinterest always has lots and lots of good recipe ideas for you to use up any leftovers. Okay, and that's everything. Thank you for listening. Please, like we said, visit the Love Food Hate Waste website for more tips, and there'll be tips on our website, Recycle for Greater Manchester, as well.